What are the best power moves you've ever seen someone do in real life? Story 1. I dropped my son off at preschool early with breakfast. The only other kid there was a girl eating breakfast at one end of the table. She batted her eyes and said, "You can sit by me." He said, "I like this seat over here at the other end of the table," and she got up and moved. Story 2. It was a small thing, but funny as hell, to me. I was driving somewhere with my brother in the middle of the night. We stopped at a gas station and a kid ran up to the car as we were about to drive away. My brother rolled down the window. The kid asked my brother to buy him smokes, and my brother told him straight to screw off. The kid told my brother to mess off for disrespecting him and that he best drive off like a freak or him and his buddies will beat us like the wussies we are. Something like that. My brother said something like, "Oh, sorry, sir. I guess I need my buddies then," and flashed his badge at the kid. The kid's eyes went huge and he ran. Story 3. My father told me this story. He had a friend who took a philosophy class and they were discussing authority. The teacher made an example saying, "If I say the class is over, you can leave and you will do it. But if Mark says the same thing, you will stay here." After that, Mark stood up and said the class was over, they could leave, and every student left the room. My father didn't have a lecture at that time, and when he asked his friend why he wasn't in his philosophy class, he told him this story. Story 4. My friend had just gotten his own car. It was a new driver. He parked in a multi-story car park at a shopping center, the ones where you receive a ticket upon entry and pay at a machine upon exit. Unfortunately, he lost his ticket, which meant he would have to pay the maximum daily rate of around €100. He pressed a button on the machine, seemingly not giving it much thought. Excuse me, I lost my ticket. Can you help me?" "No problem. You can go to the car park office and pay the fee to exit." "Yeah, I already tried, but the guy wasn't there. Do you know his name?" Why do you need his name for?" Just in case I need to come back. His name is Steve." "Thanks for your help. Sorry, I didn't catch your name." "My name is Louis." "Great, thanks, Louis." And then we drive the car down to the exit barrier, but had no way to get out. My friend shouted into the office without getting out of the car, "Hey, Steve, I'm finished inside. Louis said you'd open the turnstiles for me." He then picked up his phone and pretended to talk into it. "What's that? I can't hear you," Steve said, looking confused. My friend calmly ignored him and continued talking on the phone, edging towards the turnstiles. He looked back, appearing confused, once he was partially out of Steve's view. Steve shouted a few more questions that we couldn't quite hear, but my friend ignored him. The gate opened and we were able to drive out without paying anything. The casualness of the whole thing amazed me. Story 5. This kid from my high school physics class was too late. When he entered the class, the teacher said, "When you are too late, you know you're not supposed to enter that door, Jacob." This happened on a summer day and the fire exit door was open. After 10 minutes, we heard a walking sound on the metal steps of the emergency stairs outside. We had a class in room 403 on the 4th floor, and after a while, we all saw Jacob entering the room from the fire exit like nothing happened and sat down. Story 6. I was meeting up with my friends at the bar, and they'd all been there for a while and comprised about 90% of the bar's business. When I walked in, the hostess decided I was going to be the first one charged a cover fee for entry. I told her I wasn't there for their event and just wanted to sit with my friends already at the bar. She told me, "Tough luck," basically, and that I would have to pay. I yelled over to my friends that she wouldn't let me in without paying, and they all just stood up and left so we could go to our favorite bar instead. It was only like $5 or a $10 cover, and instead of getting it, they lost the majority of their current business, about 7 people total, all of whom drink more than they should. My friends made me look like a boss, but it wouldn't have been a power move without them. I'm lucky to have a great group that has each other's backs. Story 7. I was at a Mexican restaurant on Cinco de Mayo. The place was absolutely packed, yet somehow there were only like 2, maybe 3 waiters on staff. We'd been there for like 40 minutes and had drinks, but still hadn't gotten to order food. This dude at the next table stood up, started taking people's orders and delivering them to the kitchen. The other waiters seemed like they really appreciated it because people were starting to get pissed until that point. He didn't take my table's order, but he took one nearby and he sounded pretty fun. A friend ran into him a few months ago and said he's really cool. Story 8. So I'm in the US Army and it is really easy to get kicked out of the Army these days. Recently, an investigation got started on some of the guys I work with. They were accused of doing and selling drugs, but there was no evidence to support this. No drugs, no positive urinalysis, no paraphernalia, nothing. However, due to the attempted power move by the chain of command, these guys were all going to get kicked out. Well, obviously, they all lawyered up and started defending themselves. This whole process took so long that a couple of these guys were set to get out of the Army anyway. So the chain of command extends them so that they can continue to chapter them, and that's when it starts popping off. Soldier 1 finds a regulation that says you cannot extend a soldier with the express intention of chaptering them. He prints it out and drops it on the commander's desk and starts spazzing out. This is the same commander that extended him so that he couldn't leave the army and forced his pregnant wife to drive a U-Haul full of stuff across the country to his home of record. This regulation goes all the way up to the brigade commander and is still under review. He's going to win, though. Soldier 2 and Soldier 3 wrote their congressman. Soldier 3 went as far as to put it in a complaint to the inspector general, which is a huge problem for the chain of command. Soldier 3, who was the first to be accused and thus started this whole thing, goes to trial to defend himself, and his lawyer absolutely demolishes the accuser in court. Today, Soldier 3's charges were dropped, which essentially is paving the way for both Soldier 1 and Soldier 2 to get away with a mean dub. Now that's a power move. Story 9. A friend and I were driving home after a night out, and we got pulled over by the police for speeding. The cop approached our vehicle, and my friend, the driver, said to the cop, "I didn't even see you. Where were you parked?" The cop responded by saying he was parked at the bottom of an apartment building driveway that has a blind spot. My friend said to the cop, "Well, I own that building. It's private property, and I've asked you guys numerous times not to park there as I don't want my building having a reputation of being a speed trap." A couple of minutes later, after the cop verified the information, he came to the car, apologized, and sent us on our way. Story 10. I have a good personal one. I worked at a major office retail store for a while in the tech section. Everyone paid just above minimum wage except for the department heads who made $10 an hour. Well, our tech lead moved and they didn't replace him right away, so I busted my ass and made sure to fill in appropriately. Also, coming up was Black Friday and nobody was allowed to take time off. Company policy, no ifs, ands, or buts, all hands on deck. Well, I asked for time off anyway, hoping they would let me. My girlfriend's uncle was always gone on deployment, and this was one of the few years he would be home for Thanksgiving, and I really wanted to finally meet him, but they told me no. I went back to my tech position. I fulfilled that duty for about a month as if I were the tech lead, then approached the store manager, asking if I could have the position as well as the raise that accompanies it. He sat me down and explained how they weren't sure yet and I could work really hard for the next 6 months, then they would reevaluate and see if I was fit for the position. The other department managers all figured I'd be given the job and were all surprised when it hadn't happened. I smiled and said thank you for your time, walked straight to the work computer we used and typed this exact sentence. Store manager's name. This is an official 9-day notice as my last day working here will be the day before Thanksgiving. IK, Izzy. I walked right back into his office after printing it out and handed it to him. He read it, looked up at me, and asked if I could stay for Black Friday. I told him he couldn't pay me enough. Story 11. This is from back in high school in the 90s. I had a friend who was really small and would often get picked on, but he never did anything about it. Neither did the rest of us when we got picked on. Nothing ever got physical, so who cared? Why start a fight? Use your words, not your fists, etc. One day we were talking and a big dude who was in his grade grabbed him in a chokehold out of nowhere. There was no reason at all. My buddy kicked one leg forward and all of a sudden the big dude was on his back and pinned. My buddy had him by the throat. He said, "Will you stop now?" The big guy did. He never bugged him again. It so happens that the little guy's dad taught Shotokan and he was absurdly good. I've never seen anyone move so fast. He took down a guy that was 75 pounds heavier than him easily. Apparently, he helped his dad train students. He had never brought it up before as it wasn't important to him. Girls and cars were more interesting at the time to us. Story 12. This happened a few days ago, actually. The new Call of Duty was dropping on Friday. My friend is a huge fan. So Thursday, his boss came in and told him he had 2.5 weeks of vacation time he needed to use. My buddy jumped at the opportunity to take Friday off so he could stay up all night and game. His manager said, "You can't request vacation days without 72 hours notice." He immediately responded with, "I either take tomorrow off or I take the rest of the month off in 72 hours. We played COD all day Friday, LMAO. Story 13. Poker night at a friend's house. $40 buy-in winner takes all unless the last 2 people decide to split it, with 8 people playing. By the time it got down to 3 people, we had been playing for almost 5 hours already. I wanted to go home and had the most chips, so I said, let's split it between us 3. I have the most chips, I'll take 40%, and you 2 take 30% each. They both said no. I asked the same question 4 times in the next hour, but my chips went down a lot by then. It got down to me and another person, and everyone knew I wanted to go home because it was late. This other guy looks at me and says, "We can stay here forever playing just the two of us. Let's split it 50-50 and call it a night." Everyone was like, "Okay, seems fair." I took one look at my chips and said, "No, 70-30, and everyone was like, "What?" He actually caved and I went home with over $200. Story 14. This is not my personal story, but that of a coworker. She was in court and arguing with the opposing counsel about a settlement and gave them the take it or I walk ultimatum. They refused, and as she was power walking out of the courtroom, her high heel shoe slipped off her foot. Without missing a beat or even turning her head, she told her assistant who was walking with her, "Get that," kept walking. Story 15. After finishing law school, I worked as an intern while waiting for bar exam results. One day, I had to call a notoriously difficult opposing counsel to make a settlement offer. He was extremely rude to me on the phone and even refused to take my offer to his client, which is illegal. When I cited the law that supported my offer, he demanded to know what that was, which was ridiculous. While I was retrieving the law citation, he asked if I was a lawyer, and this was the day before the bar exam results were released, and I had no idea if I had passed, but I replied, "No, but I will be tomorrow." He hung up on me, and when my supervisor called him, he said he refused to speak to anyone who wasn't a lawyer. The next day, I received my results, and I had passed. I immediately submitted my registration with the state bar to obtain my license number, and for some reason, I was ahead of everyone else, so I got it very quickly. Instead of waiting for the official ceremony, someone in my office swore me in, and a week after that lawyer hung up on me, I wrote him a letter with the same settlement offer signed Psychopoet ESQ. Story 16. This is something that I did myself, and it isn't even that great of a story, but I want to tell it. One time, I was at a bar with a girl I was hanging out with, along with some other friends. Now, there were 6 of us in total. At some point, the girl's ex walked in and came over to our table to make awkward conversation. The girl was clearly uncomfortable, and so was everyone else. So I went to the bar and ordered 6 shots and brought them back to the table. I handed a shot to each person in my group and held mine out for a toast. The girl's ex got the hint and left us alone. Story 17. I used to be a bartender at a Walkabout Bar, which is an Australian-themed chain of bar/club venues. One night, a particularly horrendous-looking woman and 2 men were standing at the bar waiting to be served. Now, the only appropriate way to describe this trio would be to say that they looked like they came to the bar straight from a taping of Jeremy Kyle, where they were trying to figure out which of this girl's cousins was the father of her baby. As is my job, I approached the 3 of them, and before I could get past, "Hi, what can I get you?" the woman shouted, "Large rosé." There was no please or thank you, but that pretty much standard procedure at this bad bar, so I ignored her rudeness and started pouring the wine. There was only about half a large glass worth left in the bottle, but there was more in the fridge. As I turned around to retrieve a fresh bottle, she once again shouted, "Oi, keep pouring." I held up the empty bottle for her to see and told her, "The bottle is empty. I'm going to," and of course, she cut me off. "Well, you better get another one." At this point, I stopped, turned to face her, held up the empty bottle on the bar top with one hand and picked up the glass with the other. "I'm not serving you. You're a loud, obnoxious witch, and I can't be arsed." She was briefly flabbergasted, emphasized by her jowls wobbling in disbelief, found some words finally, and said, "Well, that's not good customer service, is it?" "Well, that is not good customer behavior, and you know I handed in my 2 weeks' notice a couple of days ago, so screw it." And then I turned, poured the wine glass into the bin as I went, and walked into the back room where the shift leader was standing. I told him, "Yo, some stupid girl is going to submit a complaint about me." "Oh, why?" he asked. "Because she's a stupid girl. I'll tell you the details later," I said, and walked back out to the bar and started serving everyone else while the stupid girl stood fuming and waiting for someone else to serve her. After about 10 minutes, she remained at the bar and I calmed down. I decided that maybe I was too harsh and decided to diffuse the situation. I approached her and told her, "I'm not going to serve you, but I'm not cutting you off. Someone else would." I was interrupted again. "I don't give a damn, just pour my freaking drink." I responded, "Okay, well, now you're cut off. Bye," and left once again, tapping each of the other bartenders on the shoulder as I went and making sure the girl could see me pointing her out to all the other staff and telling them not to serve her. She later demanded to speak to a manager but left before one was available to see her, and I got off scot-free. It was a good day. Story 18. At a bar that wasn't particularly busy, the bartender was talking to a girl across the bar, ignoring everyone else who was trying to get drinks. After 10 minutes had passed and they were all still chatting, a guy reached across the bar and filled himself up from the tap. Story 19. I asked my friend's 3-year-old son who his new girlfriend was, and he said it was my girlfriend. Story 20. My in-laws were looking for a used car and had checked out several options before settling on a Crown Victoria with leather seats. As per my father-in-law, the salesman had informed them that the driver's seat was badly worn with a rip in it, but had promised to recover all the seats so that they would match without any tears. They had requested leather seats and the salesman had agreed. They had negotiated the price and were planning to come back to pick up the car. However, upon their return, they found out that the seats had been redone in fabric instead of leather, despite having paid the agreed price for leather. The salesman tried to convince them to accept the fabric seats, but my father-in-law wasn't convinced. On the other hand, my mother-in-law remembers that they had looked at many cars and believed that this one had leather seats. When she realized that it did not, she decided to leave and find the one they had actually intended to purchase. The salesman promised to have the seats reupholstered with leather by 4 p.m. that day, and according to my father-in-law, it is unclear whether they ultimately accepted the car or not. Story 21. During my senior year of high school, I was in the marching band and sat next to a girl who had no idea of my feelings for her. One day, during a home football game, we were given snacks by the parent association during a break in the third quarter. In the fourth quarter, we were sitting in between plays without playing any music, and the girl pulled out a ring pop from her uniform and unwrapped it. She then held it up to me and jokingly asked me to marry her. I was so in love with her that I panicked and didn't understand that she was joking. But before I could respond, a sophomore who knew about my feelings leaned forward and put the entire ring pop in his mouth, making a loud slurping noise. The girl let go and laughed hysterically for several minutes. If he hadn't done that, I might have confessed my love right then and there. Story 22. I started working at a company in 2014 as a temporary agent, and I was hired in 2015. I received a couple of small raises in that position leading up to 2016. However, I got a new manager at the start of that year. This woman was initially meticulous and friendly, but she was not a good manager. Despite having the strongest production numbers on my team and the highest satisfaction ratings from the customers I dealt with, she continuously criticized my work because I didn't always follow the uniform script for concluding calls or greetings. I believed it was better to sound human than to follow a script, but she didn't like that. In various quote-unquote performance reviews, she discovered that I didn't have a college degree and didn't like that either, so she just criticized everything I did. It was later announced that our department was being closed and we started discussing other departments I could join. She told me that I would not succeed in the company without a college degree, and unfortunately, I took that to heart. I began applying for positions in other departments that were below my pay grade. However, none of them worked out and I became increasingly frustrated. Out of desperation, I began applying for jobs that I wasn't qualified for. At this point, a few coworkers advised me to focus on obtaining a degree because they believed I wouldn't get a promotional offer without one. But to my surprise, I was selected for a big promotion and a significant raise. Several of my other coworkers went on to other departments, but they were all lateral moves. The satisfaction of informing my manager that not only was I being promoted to another department, but also that I was the only one on her team to have done so was just too sweet. She looked like a deer in the headlights, absolutely stunned. It was beautiful. I moved on, enjoyed my time in that new position for a while, and have since been promoted again into yet another department. I'm currently in line for another promotion before the end of the year, and I still don't have a college degree, but that's okay. Story 23. I was at a party in college where one of my friends was chatting up a girl he was super into. Another one of our friends went up and pantsed him, pants and boxers. My friend didn't freak out or break the conversation flow. He just stood there, daffy ducking without giving a damn. And that man got that night.